Our daily Bible reading for April 28th. Our reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 20. We'll begin with verse 1 and read down through verse 26. One day, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, the chief priests and scribes with the elders came up and said to him, "Tell us by what authority you do these things, or who is it that gave you this authority?" He answered them, "I also will ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from man?" And they discussed it with one another, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why did you not believe him?' But if we say from man, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet." So they answered that they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." And he began to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went into another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit from the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent another servant, but they also beat and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third. This one also they wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him." But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Let us kill him, so that the inheritance may be ours." And they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When they heard this, they said, "Surely not." But he looked directly at them and said, "What then is this that is written? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush him." The scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him at that very hour, for they perceived that he had told this parable against them. But they feared the people. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not?" But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, "Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?" They said, "Caesar's." He said to them, "Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answer, they became silent. One of the ways that scam artists and counterfeiters have been so successful down through the ages is by virtue of their ability to forge documents that are so convincing as to be nearly foolproof. In many cases, even experts are tricked by the preciseness of the documentation. Authorities warn the general public to require positive identification when being confronted by someone claiming to have proper authority. Doing this will help ensure that all things are done decently and in order, and less likely that crimes will be committed. Having the authority to conduct business is important in almost any type of atmosphere. Adults need proper authority to care for children, whether by virtue that they are parents or guardians. Police officers operate with authority. Public officials are elected and given authority to create laws. When Jesus was confronted by the chief priests and scribes and the elders, the ruling class of the Jews, they wished to know his credentials. Who authorized him to teach in their territory? They did this with great show by virtue of the numbers that were there. In a rather bold move, Jesus will prove that the whole line of questioning is invalid, since they were unable to recognize the authority which John the Baptist used. The strategy not only backfired, but caused a considerable embarrassment to them in that they could not come to a consensus even on the subject of John's authority. Jesus had clearly been given authority, as he stated earlier in his ministry, as we find in the Gospel of John, chapter 5, verse 26 and 27. "For just as the Father has life in himself, even so he gave to the Son also to have life in himself. And he gave him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man." We also find in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11 and verse 27, All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, nor does anyone know the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son wills to reveal him. It is evident by the hardness of heart by the rulers, the Jews, that they were not interested in truth. Only a handful would recognize the King of Kings and thus be blessed in their obedience. Not the miracles nor the wisdom that Jesus displayed would persuade them. Question of the day: what authority do we recognize in the church today? And a thought to meditate on this day: take time to consider today what authority guides your life. And those are our thoughts for today, April 28th.